How's it going, everyone? Roslyn here. So one of the questions I get asked the most with regards to SMT5 is about my build for the main character. The answer to that is complicated, as my build evolved throughout my playthrough in order to fit the needs of where I was at any given time. So what I've decided to do instead is give you 4 different builds for the main character, all of which I have personally tested against challenge mode virtual trainer battles, as well as hard mode super bosses in order to verify their viability. Now before we get into the builds, I do just want to go over a few things. First, all builds shown will be using Nama's essence for resistances. This means that a passive skill for removing physical weakness will be included in all builds. In an optimal scenario, you would actually want to use the Demi-Fiend's essence, but since not everyone will have that, I went with something that would still give great resistances, but also simulate needing to incorporate resistance passives. Second, you will see that almost all 4 builds will incorporate Energy Drain, Kannabi Veil, and Enduring Soul. These builds are meant to be viable at the hardest difficulty, and to be Godborn ready. This means making sacrifices for sustain and survivability. Energy Drain is just an extremely efficient skill that heals both HP and MP, and offers respectable damage, making it one of the most efficient skills in the game. As for Kannabi Veil, well, that skill is just broken. It's a defensive skill that can't be dispelled by the enemy and reduces incoming damage on the following turn by a whopping 30%. Basically, the game calculates how much damage you will take, and then Kannabi Veil just chops 30% off of that. With proper turn management through the use of hitting enemy weaknesses, or through the use of Yabusame's shot, you can make it such that you have 100% uptime on Kannabi Veil while still being able to attack with your main character. If you're still not convinced on Energy Drain or Kannabi Veil, come hang out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming and join the many others who have come to see just how powerful they really are. Finally, Enduring Soul is just to prevent those one-shots from nasty boss attacks that have Pierce. Alright, let's finally move on to the builds themselves. For the first build, we have the familiar strength build from the original SMT5. Murakumo is the main damaging skill of choice, being a strength scaling almighty attack with a base power of 275. However, this base power is increased to 330 whenever the skill critically hits. High Almighty Pleroma is taken to increase the damage of Murakumo, though it also has the side benefit of increasing the damage of Energy Drain as well. Null Fizz removes the weakness from the Nama essence, and Null Light is there so that we either resist or nullify everything. Energy Drain, Kannabi Veil, and Enduring Soul were talked about at the beginning of the video, and then High Restore just ensures that you never run out of MP. If you ever want to have a small chuckle, just use Energy Drain on a Magatsuhi critical turn. The amount of MP you'll restore is quite impressive. Anyways, the general flow of this build is very simple. Start every turn by casting Kannabi Veil with the main character. After that, you'll want to ensure that at least one of your demon companions can generate a press turn for you. My personal go-to is to use a physical demon with Yabusame's shot. Then with this extra press turn, you can attack with Murakumo or heal up with Energy Drain as needed. Continue doing this until your Magatsuhi gauge is filled, and then go to town. Rinse and repeat. Next up is a magic focused build using the new unique skill for the main character, Moonlight Frost. Moonlight Frost is a 200 base power ice skill with Pierce that hits all enemies. As you can see, the build is almost entirely the same as the strength build, except that our stat points are now allocated towards magic instead of strength, and we have swapped Murakumo and High Almighty Pleroma for Moonlight Frost and High Ice Pleroma. This build does do less single target damage than the strength build, but in return it deals much more AoE damage. You could look to boost its single target output by incorporating Bufubarion or Ice Age, but I've personally found this to be unnecessary. Now, given how similar this build is to the strength one, the general flow is identical. Start with Kannabi Veil at the beginning of each turn, generate a press turn by hitting an enemy weakness or using Yabusame's shot, and then attack with the main character using Moonlight Frost or Energy Drain as needed. This next build sees the main character fall into a pure supporting role, with the goal of reducing incoming damage and speeding up the rate at which the Magatsuhi gauge fills. Energy Drain, Kannabi Veil, Enduring Soul, Null Fizz, and Null Light are all taken for the same reasons I've already mentioned. Boon Boost EX is to extend the duration of either Debilitate or Luster Candy by 2 turns. And the choice between Debilitate or Luster Candy really just comes down to what your team needs more. For me, I already had ample access to Luster Candy, so Debilitate was the way to go. Either one works just fine, just choose whichever fits best for your current party. Finally, we have the new unique skill for the main character, Evergreen Dance. This is a skill that can only be used once per turn, and it fills the Magatsuhi gauge by about 15 to 20%, providing a very noticeable increase in the number of Magatsuhi turns you can get per fight. As with the other builds, the general flow of this support build is the same. You'll spend your first action each turn setting up Kannabi Veil, and then you'll want to generate extra press turns by hitting enemy weaknesses or using Yabusame Shot. And then on your main character's second action, you have a few options. If the enemy's debuffs have fallen off, you'll want to use Debilitate. If you're starting to run low on MP, then you'll want to start refilling with Energy Drain. Otherwise, use Evergreen Dance to increase your Magatsuhi gauge. Finally, the fourth and last build is a dodge tank build that makes use of many new unique skills in order to deal a lot of damage and generate extra press turns. The core of the build revolves around 4 skills: Paraselene Blur, Luminescent Mirage, Intercalation, and Elusive Eclipse. Paraselene Blur is the main damaging skill of choice. It's a strength-based light element attack that hits 4 times for 150 power each for a total of 600 power. This is among the most power for a single skill in the entire game, rivaling Magatsuhi skills such as Freikugel EX. The catch though is that Paraselene Blur can only be used if you dodged an attack on the previous turn, which is where Luminescent Mirage comes in. Luminescent Mirage is a 1-turn buff that gives you a 100% chance to dodge one attack on the following turn. We then capitalize on this further through both Intercalation and Elusive Eclipse. Intercalation gives us an extra press turn during our next turn whenever we dodge an attack, and then Elusive Eclipse causes us to counterattack the enemy after dodging an attack with a severe physical attack that has Pierce. Oh, and the passive also happens to increase our evasion ever so slightly. To round out the build, Fierce Roar is taken to taunt enemies into attacking the main character, and Highlight Pleroma is taken to increase the damage of Paraselene Blur. The one major caveat to this build is that it is a much riskier build to run. The unique skills are so synergistic that you really want to be running all 4 of them. And you also really want Fierce Roar as well, as without it, the likelihood of your main character being able to dodge an attack goes down significantly. That's 5 slots taken up, which doesn't leave room for much else. I've opted to keep Energy Drain due to how MP hungry this build can be, but this means cutting Kannabi Veil, which will result in the rest of your party taking a lot more damage. Just keep this in mind should you choose to run this build on hard mode or for a Godborn run. Now, as for how the flow of this build works, start by using Fierce Roar in order to taunt the enemies. Then, as per usual, you'll want to generate an extra press turn by hitting an enemy weakness or through the use of Yabusame Shot. Once your main character gets their action again, you'll want to use Luminescent Mirage, and then from there you'll want to prioritize keeping up Fierce Roar and using Luminescent Mirage every turn. On the turns that you don't need to renew Fierce Roar, use Paracelescent Blur or Energy Drain if you're running low on MP. And that'll do it for this video going over 4 different builds for the main character in Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance. If you found this video helpful and informative, please be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you have any questions about Shin Megami Tensei V or any other game that I cover, feel free to hit me up over on Twitch at twitch.tv/RosalindGaming or my Discord server, both of which you can find linked in the video description below. Until next time, take care.